in Lees-Galloway.
Mr Speaker, I just have to start where Tony Ryle left off. It's a bit rich hearing the National Party talking about tobacco control initiatives when every step of the way, when Labour was in government, National voted against every single measure that Labour introduced to curb tobacco smoking in New Zealand, whether it was the smoke-free environments, whether it was the excise tax, whatever Labour put up, National voted against it every single time. But Mr Speaker, I can say I am pleased they have finally put their guns down. They've decided the fight's not worth fighting. They're going to get on the winning team. They're going to join the team that is fighting the harm caused by tobacco. They're a bit late to the game, but we welcome them. But I have to say it's a bit rich hearing Tony Ryle talking about tobacco control and the initiatives that government has introduced, when he said himself that there was no evidence to support getting rid of tobacco displays, and it was only thanks to the work of Tariana Turia and a number of people from the opposition that finally got the government to see sense on that one. But let's hope that consensus will continue into the future. Mr Speaker, it is a pleasure to speak in the address and reply debate. Sometimes I have to say I've listened to quite a few of the contributions from members on this the debate, and you'd forget that this was the address and reply debate. This is the debate. This is how it works. This is where the government is supposed to get up and talk about their plan, and the government members and the National Party members are supposed to get up and say what an excellent speech from the throne it was and how that plan is going to take New Zealand forward. And then, of course, we in the opposition, well, especially us Labour members, we will support the amendment put forward by our leader, David Shearer, to add the words, and that the National-led government will sell New Zealand's assets against the will of the public. The government has no ideas to create jobs or a clean and innovative New Zealand, that the government is widening the gap between the very rich and the rest, and therefore this House has no confidence in the National-led government. That's the way it's supposed to work. But the vast majority of National MPs have talked about anything else except for the speech from the throne, and anything else except for whatever plan it is that the government has to get this economy moving again and to get New Zealanders back to work. They would talk about the Labour Party. They would talk about what the Labour Party did when we were last in government. They would talk about our new leader, David Shearer. He's a top bloke. I'm pleased to hear people talking about him, but I really think the National Party members ought to be focused on supporting their leader and their plan. But they want to avoid it at all costs, because, Mr Speaker, we all know that there is no plan. There was no plan for the last 3 years, and there is no plan for the next 3 years from this government, and the National MPs have avoided talking about what they are going to do like the plague. Sometimes a few members manage to offer a few platitudes about what it is the government wants to do. They want to make New Zealand a better place to work and to raise our children. They want to get debt under control. They want to build a brighter future. Isn't that the old chestnut? That's been their campaign slogan for the last 2 elections. Build a brighter future. But it's always in the future. It's always sometime further down the track. It's never now. The future will never get here under this government because they have no plan. They want to create more jobs. They want to back business. They want people to be successful. They want New Zealanders to be entrepreneurial and innovative. They want to remove roadblocks and obstacles, encourage and develop all the opportunities New Zealand has to offer. Mr Speaker, don't we all? But my question to the government is, how? Where is the plan? How are you going to do that? It's wonderful to have all these platitudes. Not a single member in this House would disagree with any of those statements from those National Party members. But what the government doesn't have is a plan. And that's what New Zealand needs to see, is a real plan. The nearest thing I have seen to a plan, the actual action that they want to undertake, is to sell it all. Sell off all our assets, sell them off to foreign owners. Oh yes, New Zealanders might be at the front of the queue, but we know what's going to happen to those shares. They're going to end up in foreign hands. We lose control. All that stuff about how we were going to keep 51%, but don't worry, that would still mean that New Zealanders would still be in control, the government would still be in control. Well, that's turned out to be untrue as well. And they reckon they've got a mandate. They reckon New Zealanders voted to sell off our assets. Well, here's the truth, Mr Speaker. There are 121 MPs in this Parliament this term. 60 of those MPs represent parties that went out and said, yes, we want to sell those assets off. But 60, the same number of MPs in this Parliament, went out and said, we don't want to sell off those assets. And then there's the one. Then there's that one guy, Peter Dunn. The one who goes whichever way the wind is blowing, he goes, whoever wants to give him a ministerial portfolio, those are the people he'll vote with. And it's only because Peter Dunn can't make up his mind and is prepared to sell his vote to the highest bidder that New Zealand and this government will be selling off assets this term. The people did not vote for asset sales. They won't stand for asset sales, and I think the government is going to see themselves in a lot of trouble as this year rolls on and people realise that those asset sales are upon us, and they start to revolt against what this government is doing. Mr. Speaker, as I said, I listen to a lot of National Party members. I listen particularly to Jonathan Coleman, the Minister of Defence, because I wanted to hear what his plan is. I wanted to hear what his plan is to cut the $400 million that has to be cut from the annual budget of the Defence Forces by 2015, just so that they can stand still, because the government has said no new money for the Defence Forces. You have to find that money from within the Defence Forces budget, and that means $400 million worth of cuts. And I wanted to know how that was going to happen. I wanted to know if he thought that cutting the military bands was the answer. It's going to save less than $1 million. $1 million down, $399 million to go. Where's the rest of the plan, Minister Coleman? That's what I want to know. What about cutting down the territorials? Will that get us there? Well, there's a few things that the government has decided they're going to do. The Defence Force and the Defence Ministry have been working their backsides off to try and find those cuts. And you know what they've found so far? $97.5 million worth of savings, and good on them. They've worked hard to meet the minister's expectations. But you know what? $97.5 million still leaves over $300 million to be saved. Where are the rest of those cuts going to come from? How much is going to have to be cut from the frontline forces? How is our deployable force overseas going to be affected by this? How many jobs are going to be lost as a result of those savings that have to be made? Where is the plan? It's just like everything with this government. They've got their goals, they've got their platitudes, they've got their aspirations, but as usual, there is absolutely no plan. And Jonathan Coleman didn't talk about defence once in his contribution to the address and reply debate. I think it's because he's embarrassed about what is happening to the Defence Forces under the national government. I'll tell you the big question he is going to have to deal with, and that is, what does he do about morale in the Defence Forces? Because people are now lining up to leave the Defence Force because of the appalling way the government has treated those personnel and the appalling job they have done of leading the Defence Force through this period of change. So not only are we losing the people that the government has cut, but we're also losing the people that they want to keep, because they don't want to have a bar of staying in the Defence Forces anymore. They're out of here. And we are losing those skills. We are losing those people. And there is no opportunity for people to get in there and develop their skills and grow the Defence Forces. And I tell you what, as we see more and more jobs being cut, there's going to be more and more people put on the scrap heap, more and more people on the unemployment benefit, thanks to this government. The government that has no plan, the government that wants to build a brighter future, but it's a future that will never come because they can't tell us how they're going to get there.
Honourable Chris Finlayson.
Speaker, I support the motion moved by my new colleagues.